Rain hammered the cemetery like bullets against stone, and beneath a crooked oak, a trembling dog refused to move from the mound of fresh earth. His fur was soaked, his ribs cut the air like sharpened bones. But he would not leave. Not when the scent of the only human who ever loved him still lingered in the dirt. The grave was new, the kind that still smelled of mud and sorrow. A crude wooden cross leaned to one side, and at its foot lay a dog, his body curled tightly against the earth as if trying to merge with it. His name, once whispered with warmth, was Shadow. He didn't understand death. He only knew absence, the stillness where a heartbeat used to be, the silence where laughter once lived. For 3 days, Shadow had waited beside the grave of his owner, an old man named Thomas Hale, a war veteran who had taken in the stray when nobody else would. Thomas was quiet and gentle, a man who spoke to Shadow as if he were human. "You're my reason to wake up," he would murmur, running a trembling hand through the dog's dark fur. But heart failure does not ask permission. One cold morning, Thomas never woke again. The neighbors buried him without ceremony, muttering that the dog should be taken away. But when the animal bit the first man who tried, they left him there, alone. And so, Shadow waited. Through thunder, through the howling wind, through the nights where hunger gnawed at his ribs like knives, each drop of rain washed away the scent a little more, until even the earth began to forget. But Shadow did not. He stayed. Days bled into nights. Children threw stones at him from the cemetery fence. "Haunted mutt," they laughed. He didn't bark, he didn't flinch, he only lowered his head against the dirt, guarding it with the last strength he had. Then came them. A black truck rolled to a stop on the gravel road. 2 men climbed out, one with a scar running across his jaw, the other chewing on a cigarette. They worked for the local dog-fighting ring, scouting the streets for strays. The cemetery was their new hunting ground. "There's one," the scarred man said, pointing. "Big enough to train." Shadow lifted his head, too weak to run. The men moved fast. A looped rope slipped around his neck, dragging him from the grave. He clawed the dirt, whining as if begging the ground to open and swallow him. His nails scraped wood, the coffin beneath. "Don't fight," the man hissed, yanking harder. "You're coming with us." That night was the first time Shadow learned what cruelty truly meant. He was thrown into a cage, the air thick with blood and fear. The other dogs inside bore scars that spoke louder than any human word. Chains rattled, men shouted, and the smell of alcohol and sweat hung heavy. Shadow was starved, beaten and taunted until the men decided he'd make a fighter. But Shadow didn't fight. He refused. When forced into the pit, he didn't snarl or bite. He cowered. That defiance enraged them more than teeth ever could. For weeks, they tried to break him. Until one night, the scarred man, drunk and furious, dragged him behind the truck, driving fast through the back roads. The rope tightened. Gravel tore through Shadow's paws. He didn't even cry anymore, only stared up at the dark sky, as if searching for the grave he'd left behind. When the truck stopped, the man kicked him into a ditch by the highway. "Die here, you worthless mutt," he spat, driving away into the storm. Shadow lay there, body broken, rain washing blood from his fur. Every breath felt like glass cutting through his chest. But then, faintly through the thunder, came footsteps, small, hesitant ones. A flashlight beam cut through the rain. "Mom, there's a dog here," a woman's voice replied from the distance, trembling between fear and pity. "Don't touch him, Noah. He might be hurt." The boy ignored her. He knelt beside the shivering creature, holding out his tiny umbrella as if it could shield him from all the world's cruelty. Shadow's eyes, dim, hollow, half dead, lifted toward the child. And for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel alone. The shelter smelled of antiseptic and wet fur. Machines beeped faintly in the background, a rhythm Shadow didn't understand but somehow feared. Every sound, every touch made him flinch. Emma Hale, no relation to Thomas, though fate had a strange sense of poetry, stood beside the examination table, watching as the vet stitched the deep cuts on the dog's neck. "He's lucky to be alive," the vet muttered. "Must have been dragged for miles. And see this?" He lifted the dog's paw gently. Road burns. Rope marks. Someone did this deliberately. Emma swallowed hard. She'd seen neglect before. Thin cats, abandoned puppies, starved horses. But this was different. There was something sacred in the way this dog endured. Even half dead, his eyes burned with the stubborn light of loyalty betrayed. She reached out. Shadow trembled violently. His body pressed against the metal wall, a low, fearful whine escaping him. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." But he didn't believe her. Not yet. Days turned into a fragile routine. Emma came every morning before work to feed him, sitting quietly as he ate, never pushing too close. Noah sometimes snuck in after school, sitting cross-legged beside the kennel, reading aloud from his comic books. Shadow listened, not to the words, but to the tone. Gentle, curious, alive. Still, whenever someone opened the door too fast or dropped a metal bowl, he froze, tail tucked, eyes wild with memory. The past lived inside him like an unhealed wound. Emma knew that kind of pain. Her late husband had been a police officer, killed in a case that never saw justice. Grief had left her numb for years, until her son's laughter dragged her back to life. Maybe that's why she saw herself in the dog, another soul that had lost everything but the will to survive. One afternoon, an investigator came to the shelter. His badge glinted under the fluorescent lights. "Ms. Hale, we've had reports of a dog-fighting ring operating near the West Highway. The dog you brought in, he might be evidence." Emma frowned. "Evidence?" He nodded. "If we can prove he was abused by those men, we can shut them down. But we'll need your testimony. Are you willing to identify who dumped him?" Emma hesitated. She had seen the truck's plates that night, half covered in mud, but clear enough. She'd written them down instinctively, not knowing why. But now she did. Still, the thought of testifying, of facing men capable of such cruelty, chilled her. She had a child to protect. That night, she visited Shadow's cage. He was lying down, his eyes half open, breathing slow. She sat on the cold floor beside him. "You were loyal to someone who didn't deserve you," she whispered. "But I won't betray you like they did." For a long moment, the dog didn't move. Then, slowly, painfully, he lifted his head, just enough to rest it on her knee. It was the smallest gesture, but it broke something open inside her. The next morning, She walked into the investigator's office. Her voice didn't shake when she said, "I'll testify." The courtroom smelled of sweat and fear. The two men, the scarred one and his partner, sat at the defense table, smirking like they owned the world. Shadow wasn't there, of course. But Emma felt his presence beside her. Steady as breath, she told the story, how she'd found him, the injuries, the license plate. She showed the photographs, rope burns, open wounds, the x-rays of broken ribs. The room went quiet. The defense attorney tried to twist her words, but the jury didn't need much convincing. Some crimes carry their own gravity, the kind that pulls justice down, whether the world is ready or not. The verdict came swift. Guilty on multiple counts of animal cruelty, racketeering, and illegal dogfighting. 15 years without parole. When the judge slammed his gavel, Emma felt something unclench in her chest. Not triumph, but peace. Months passed. Shadow healed slowly. His fur grew back, his scars faded, though some would always remain. Trust came in fragments. The first time he ate from Emma's hand. The first time he let Noah brush his fur. The first time he dared to sleep with his head resting on a human's foot. Sometimes he'd still wake in the night, trembling, staring toward the window as if expecting chains to rattle again. Emma would sit beside him, murmuring softly, "You're home now." One spring morning, Noah opened the back door. "Go on, Shadow," he said. "It's okay." The dog stepped outside hesitantly. The air was thick with the scent of wet grass and sun. The world seemed impossibly vast after months of confinement. He ran, not from fear, but toward freedom. His paws thundered across the yard, his tail slicing through the air like a banner. Then he stopped at the edge of the hill where the sunlight broke through the clouds and looked back. Emma stood there, smiling through tears. For a heartbeat, the world was quiet. Then Shadow lifted his face toward the sky, eyes reflecting gold and blue, the colors of both pain and peace, and howled, not in mourning, but in remembrance. The sound carried far across the fields, over the town, even beyond the old cemetery, where a wooden cross still leaned beneath an oak. A loyal dog, once broken by cruelty, now lived not in chains, but in light. Final line. And as the sun rose behind him, Shadow ran, not from his past, but toward a world that had finally learned his name meant hope.